Thank you, sir. You made me host. So, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hope I'm audible to all.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, good evening, very good evening. So, just a second, let me share my board with you. So, everyone have joined? So, in the previous class, we have discussed about the circulatory system, right? Yeah. So, we have completed the blood cell portions. We have completed. If I'm asking few questions, will you be able to answer it? Yes. I'll ask you a few questions. Yeah, meanwhile, I'll share the board too. Fine. Okay. So, Blessy Angeline, unmute and answer, okay? Unmute yourself and answer. Are they right? Okay. Can you tell me which one is the biggest
Ma'am, your voice is breaking, ma'am.
WBC? Largest in size. Voice is breaking. Now? Am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, largest WBC I'm asking for. If anyone, any other people knows also, you can answer.
Ma'am, question once again, ma'am.
Largest WBC. Largest WBC. I have told you this in class.
Monocyte,
Exactly. That is monocytes, okay? And numerous WBC.
nu- mm, neutrophil,
Neutrophil. That's good. Fine. Okay. Like tell me whether the RBC of the human is having nucleus or not.
no, ma'am. Uh, no, ma'am, can you hear me?
It is not having nucleus, right?
Ma'am, your voice is breaking, ma'am. Your voice is not audible, ma'am.
Hear me now. Guys, can
No, ma'am. Stucking, ma'am. Your voice is stucking.
yeah, just a second. I'll try to rectify this issue. Just a second, guys. Yeah. So can you able to hear me now? Can you able to hear me?
ma'am.
Yes, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's great. Fine. I'll start the class. So let me share my screen with you. Tell me whether you can able to see the screen. You can able to see the screen, right? Yes?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
Okay, that's great. Finally. So these minutes, some 15 minutes if you want, I'll take additionally also. Yeah, because I have wasted these. Fine. So in the previous class, we have discussed about this blood, body fluids and circulation, and we just completed the cellular portions, right? The blood we have completed. And in this class, we are going to discuss about heart. Yeah, heart, because you know the blood vascular system or the circulatory system, it consists of blood, heart, and blood vessels. You know that, right? So we are just done with the blood portion, and now we are going to see about this heart. Yeah. So if you are seeing this heart, this is the muscular pumping organ. Muscular pumping organ, right? See, if you're looking at the lower vertebrates, yeah, if you're looking at the lower vertebrates, like this is amphibians, reptiles, aves, and mammals. If you're looking at these vertebrates, see in pieces how many chamber we have? Only two chamber we had, right? And amphibians and reptiles, we had three chambers. Aves and mammals, we had four chambers, right? In pisces, we have seen about single circulation where the heart was having only one atrium and one ventricle, right? And coming to this amphibian and reptiles, they have two atrium and only one ventricle. Yeah, coming to the aves and mammals, we do have four different chambers, two atrium and two ventricle we have. Clear? Right, now coming to the human structure. Human heart structure, how it will be looking. Yeah, basically where it is located in, it is located in the mediastinum. Mediastinum. Yeah, it is located in the mediastinum, which means between the lungs. Between the lungs, it is protected by means of the rib cage, right? It is protected by means of rib cage, and between the lungs, heart it is located, and it is slightly tilted towards left side. Yeah, slightly tilted towards the left side. That's why in case of left lung, we will be having a notch. You remember what it is? In left lung, we will be having a small notch. What it will be called as? Can anyone say I have taught you this under respiratory system? If you are looking at the left lung, here we will be having a small I only told it is cardiac notch. Okay, here we will be having a small curvy like structure that is due to the presence of heart over here. Yeah, and it is slightly tilted towards the left side, right? So basically, this portion between the lungs, you will call it as mediastinum, right? And heart, it is covered by means of double membrane, double layered membrane. You will call it as pericardium. Pericardium, right? That is outer parietal pericardium, inner visceral pericardium. Inner visceral pericardium, right? So generally, I'll just erase this portion alone. Outer parietal pericardium and inner visceral pericardium, right? See, if you are looking at this portion, if this is heart, a cone shaped organ. See, this is covered by means of two different layers. The inner layer that is intact with the muscular wall of the heart, right? Intact with the muscular wall of the heart, and the outer layer is also present like this. Yeah. So inner layer you will call it as inner visceral pericardium. Outer layer you will call it as outer parietal pericardium. In between of that, we do have a fluid called as pericardial fluid, right? We have fluid called as pericardial fluid. See, what would be the function of this pericardial fluid, right? See, this pericardial fluid, it is helping as shock preventer or shock absorber, right? It helps in absorption of shock. Fine. So this pericardial fluid which is present between the membrane is basically helping in absorption of the shock, right? And coming to the structure of the heart, we have, as I told you, we have four different chambers. Yeah, four different chambers. two atrium or two auricle we do have. See, this is right atrium, this is left atrium, and in the lower region we have right ventricle and left ventricle. Clear? Listen, this is a pumping organ. You have to remember that heart is the major pumping organ, which is almost pumping 5 liters of blood for a minute. Yeah, per minute it is almost pumping 5 liters of blood. So from where it is getting to where it is pumping to. Yeah, that we need to look after. You know that how this heart function and lung function, it is associated together, right? See, this heart will be collecting the deoxygenated blood, which means carbon dioxide filled blood, right? See, carbon dioxide, it is produced as a result of metabolism, right? And that will be diffused into the blood, that we will call it as deoxygenated blood. And those deoxygenated blood, it is collected by means of a special type of blood vessel, that is vein. Veins, like maximum all the veins, it is collecting the deoxygenated blood, and that is pouring that into the right atrium. Clear? Once the deoxygenated blood, it is given to the right atrium, further by means of contraction, it is given to the right ventricle, right? Now this deoxygenated blood needed to be oxygenated, right? So this blood have to taken to the lungs. You remember the mechanism I have taught you in respiration? See, this deoxygenated blood have to taken to the lungs, both left and right lungs it need to taken to, right? For oxygenation process, the carbon dioxide will be given out of your system, and within the blood, means to the blood, the oxygen will be getting diffused into that, right? Now this oxygenated blood, right from the lungs, it is getting into the heart once again by means of the another blood vessels. I'll tell you where it will come here. And then by means of contraction, it is coming to the left ventricle, and from left ventricle, it is going outside. The oxygenated blood, it needed to get supplied to every cells and tissues of our body, right? So this left ventricle, it will be pumping, which means through this left ventricle we are having the biggest blood vessel of our body, and like by means of the heart contraction, the oxygenated blood, it is being pumped to the whole system. Clear? So let's see which are all the what are all the blood vessels that is bringing the deoxygenated blood from the body. See, we have, I just erase this portion. The major blood vessels, you will call it as vena cava. Not blood vessel, it is major vein or the larger vein. Major or larger vein, we will call it as vena cava, right? See, there are two different major vena cava that is pouring or draining their blood into right atrium, and we have one more two, that is coronary sinus. Listen, see, vena cava, it is the larger vein. Vein, basically it is collecting the deoxygenated blood from all, like which means from all part of our body, right? Different type of veins, it is collecting deoxygenated blood from through all part of our body, and that is giving that to the right atrium by means of this larger vein. Yeah, you will call this as superior vena cava. First one, that is draining their blood into deoxygenated blood into right atrium, it is superior vena cava, and another one it is inferior vena cava. Inferior vena cava. The third one, it is coronary sinus. Coronary sinus. I'll tell you what is their function. Listen, the superior vena cava, like we have the upper body portion, right? Superior vena cava, it is draining their blood. It is collecting deoxygenated blood from the upper portion of the body. Clear? Superior vena cava, it is collecting the deoxygenated blood from the upper portion of the body, and it is draining them into the right atrium like this, right? And this inferior vena cava, it is collecting the deoxygenated blood from the lower portion of the body, right? Yeah, and then it is draining that into the right atrium like this. Getting? So next one, this coronary sinus. See, anything related to this coronary. Yeah, coronary means heart. Yeah, just like how pulmonary means lungs, likewise coronary means heart. Right? So this coronary sinus, see, the heart itself, it is an organ. Correct? The heart itself, it is an organ. For it to work, it requires some amount of energy, right? Yeah, it requires some amount of energy. So whenever the metabolism happens, that time only the energy can be produced. Is it clear? See, if there is a need of energy, the organ or the cell is in need of energy, then inside of it, metabolism supposed to happen. Yeah, that is mandatory process. If metabolism is happening, then what would be the residue process? What would be the residue? We will be getting carbon dioxide, right? You are getting what I am saying? See, cells and tissues, whenever they are undergoing the metabolic process means it is nothing. It is burning up the food material with the help of oxygen. So whenever it is burning up the food material with the help of oxygen, the carbon dioxide and water will be produced. So this is what the metabolic residue. Clear? Even the heart, what I was about to say is, this heart is also a muscular organ. Yeah, for them to work, it requires energy, right? It requires energy for sure, right? So that time what happens, whenever it is undergoing metabolism, it will be producing carbon dioxide. The heart muscles will also produce carbon dioxide, and that is resulting in the formation of deoxygenated blood. And those deoxygenated blood also needed to get cleaned, right? It also needed to get oxygenated. So right from the heart, if the collected deoxygenated blood, it is also given into the right atrium. Am I clear? First, listen, superior vena cava, it is draining the deoxygenated blood, which is being collected from the upper portion of the body, right? And inferior vena cava, it is draining the blood, which is collected from the lower portion of the body. And coronary sinus, that is draining the deoxygenated blood into the right atrium, which is being collected from the heart muscles itself. Am I clear? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, right. So basically, these three main vena cava, larger veins, it is draining their deoxygenated blood into the right atrium, right? So as a result of that, right atrium will be filled by means of blood now. Yeah. So whenever it is being filled in this way, it is being filled in this way passively, which means like without any contractions, drop by drop, the right ventricle, it is receiving blood. Yeah, passive movement, we generally call it as 70 percentage of the blood. Yeah, 70 percentage of the blood, right from right atrium to right ventricle, it is moving by means of passive movement. Clear? And like by means of what it is moving, like there should be some pathway, right? For them to move, there should be pathway. If it is just a muscular obstacle is there, then how will it move? There will be no movement, right? You're getting what I'm saying? So there is a pathway between this right atrium and right ventricle, that is, it is having a valve here. Yeah, it is having the valve here. Between the right chambers, we have tricuspid valve. Since it is having three cuspids, we will call it as tricuspid valve. Clear? Fine. So now this blood, it is coming to the right ventricle, drop by drop or by means of passive movement. 70 percentage of the blood, which is reaching the right ventricle, it is only by means of passive movement like this, right? And by means of what it is coming down, by means of the valve, it is coming down, right? By means of the valve, it is coming down. Then what is the name of valve? It is tricuspid valve. So just like that, we are having another valve also over here. That is bicuspid valve. Between the left chambers, we are having bicuspid valve or mitral valve. Yeah. And then listen, these two chambers, which means the right chambers and left chambers, it is further bifurcated by means of interatrioventricular septum. Interatrioventricular septum. Clear? So this right and left chambers, it is bifurcated by means of interatrioventricular septum, and here it will be having Like this chamber is there, no? Which means this partition is there, no? So this you will call it as intra-atrioventricular septum. Is that clear? See, this is between the right and left chambers, right? Right atrium and right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. This is intra-atrioventricular septum, and in between we have no between the left and means right and left chambers, that you will call it as interatrioventricular septum. Clear? And listen, between the left chambers, we do have the bicuspid or mitral valve. Hope it is clear. Like the deoxygenated blood, it is coming to the right atrium, then it is coming to the right ventricle. Now it have to be taken to the which organ? Lungs. It have to taken to, correct? The deoxygenated blood have to taken to the lungs. So from here there is a blood vessel is arising. Blood vessel arising from this. You will call it as pulmonary artery. Am I clear? If you are having any doubt, you can ask me immediately. Pulmonary artery. See, this pulmonary artery, it is carrying the deoxygenated blood from right ventricle to lungs. Right ventricle to lungs. Clear? So this blood vessel is further bifurcating like this. The blood vessel, it is arising like this, no? Shall I erase this portion? Shall I erase this portion? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So the blood vessel which arose from the right ventricle. Yeah, the blood vessel which arose from right ventricle, it is supplying the blood to deoxygenated blood to both the lungs. Yeah, and then it is bifurcating like this. So and the deoxygenated blood will be given to the both the lungs like this. Right, it will be given to the both the lungs like this. Right. So this is pulmonary artery. Yeah, pulmonary artery branches are all these are which is giving the deoxygenated blood to the lungs for the oxidation means oxygenation purpose, right? So once by means of the gaseous exchange which happens in the alveoli, the blood it got oxygenated, right? So the oxygenated blood it again have to come to the heart, right? It again have to come to the heart. So for that there is four different veins we have. Four different veins we have that is opening into that is arising from the both the lungs. Yeah, four different veins that is arising from both the lungs. Clear? And they are draining their oxygenated blood into right atrium. Yeah, oxygenated blood into right atrium like this. See, listen, there is an exception. Yeah, once again, the right ventricle, from the right ventricle, the deoxygenated blood is taken to the lungs, right? So something, the blood vessel, it is having some connection with the lungs. So generally, we'll call it as pulmonary artery. Anything related to pulmonary, that is related to lungs also. Clear? So pulmonary artery means it is the only exception case. It is only exception case which is carrying the deoxygenated blood. Which is carrying the deoxygenated blood. Why it is exception? Generally, artery will carry oxygenated blood. Clear? Generally, artery will carry oxygenated blood, but this pulmonary artery alone, it is carrying the deoxygenated blood to the lungs. Clear? Right? Clear? Yes? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then once after the gaseous exchange, the blood is being oxygenated, and now the oxygenated blood it has given to the left atrium, right? So that time there are four different blood vessels that is actually weighing, right? Four different blood vessels. It is taking the oxygenated blood from the lungs to the atrium, right? So since it is carrying the blood from the lungs, you will call it as pulmonary vein. Yeah, pulmonary vein. So what it is? Pulmonary veins also an exception case, because generally vein carries deoxygenated blood. Yeah, generally vein carries deoxygenated blood. So but here this pulmonary vein, it is carrying oxygenated blood from the lungs to the atrium. Yeah, lungs to the left atrium. Is it clear? Listen, from here the pulmonary artery taken the deoxygenated blood into the lungs, there it is getting oxygenated, and by means of the pulmonary vein it is again given back to the left atrium, right? Listen, even in this cases, superior inferior vena cava, for controlling their blood flow, they will be having certain valves like Eustachian valve, Thespesian valve, like that. They are having certain valves, right? But here, this pulmonary vein does not have any valves with it. Clear? This pulmonary vein is not having any valves with it. Yeah. So you can ask me how the air blood flow into the right atrium is controlled. How the air blood flow into the right atrium is controlled, you can ask me. This question they have asked once in the examination. Why, like how the pulmonary vein blood flow, or how the pulmonary vein draining the blood into the left atrium, right? See, it is not having the valves also. Then how it is being controlled? Actually, the cut which is observed in the pulmonary vein, it is oblique cut, right? So this is how the flow is maintained, right? The oblique cut which is present in the pulmonary vein, so that is maintaining the blood flow into the left atrium. Yeah, blood flow into the left atrium through that. Understood? Are getting it? Are getting it? Clear? So if it is not clear, I can tell it once again. Fine. Just listen it. See, the pulmonary vein, it is carrying the
Once
oxygen.
again.
Yeah, I'll repeat. So pulmonary vein, it is carrying the oxygenated blood into the left atrium.
Once again.
That's what I'm saying. Just listen. So pulmonary vein, it is carrying the oxygenated blood into the left atrium, right? The pulmonary vein, it is not having any valves with it. Yeah, valves means it will be having certain valves. Generally, veins will be having valves with it, right? But this pulmonary vein is not having any valves with it, right? So it is devoid of valves, and the vein that is having the oblique cut like this, so that is regulating the blood flow into the left atrium, right? That is what is regulating the blood flow into the left atrium. Is that clear? At least you just remember that it is not having any valves. Yeah, it is not having any valves. It is just having a oblique cut like this. Yeah, which is regulating the blood flow into the left atrium. Clear? Is that clear?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So next one, once the left atrium is have received the oxygenated blood, so that will also be filled, after some time. It will also be filled like this. Yeah, it will also be filled like this. Now from left atrium to left ventricle, blood it is moving by means of passive movement. 70% of the blood, it is moving by means of passive movement. So just like how it happened between the right chambers, right? And 30% of the blood, it is moving by means of contraction. 70% of the blood, it is moving by means of passive movement, and 30% of it, it is moving by means of contraction, right? So by means of what it is being given to the left ventricle? Yeah, by means of this bicuspid valve or mitral valve, the blood is given to the left ventricle. Clear? Yeah, so once the left ventricle is also filled by means of blood, left ventricle is also filled by means of blood, what happens? See, there is a contraction happens. There is a contraction happens, and because of the contraction, it is being pushed into the biggest blood vessel of our body, that is aorta. right? Aorta, A-O-R-T-A, right? So by means of the contraction of the left ventricle, oxygenated blood it is given to the aorta, right? Is that clear? So from aorta, it is having the further branches, which we will call it as arteries, right? So those arteries that is carrying the oxygenated blood, which is supplying the oxygenated blood throughout our body cells and tissues. Clear? So here, listen, in pulmonary artery and aorta, we will be having, in their base of it, they will be having one more valve that is called as semilunar valve. They will be having one more valve like this. Yeah, because it is resembling a particular condition in condition of moon. We used to call it as semilunar valve. What is the function of semilunar valve, and what is the function of this general this one tricuspid and bicuspid valve? Yeah, so generally these valves are helping in preventing the backflow, right? These valves are helping in preventing the backflow of the blood. Just think of this, the atrium or the auricle of the heart have pumped the blood into the ventricle, right? Now, when the ventricle is pumping the blood into the corresponding blood vessels, there may be a chance this blood can get into the atrium, right? There may be a chance that this blood may get into the atrium, right? So that is what we generally call it as backflow, right? Even when the blood is being pumped into the pulmonary artery or the blood is being pumped into the aorta, it is again having the chance of coming back. Yeah, it is having the chance of backflow. To prevent the backflow, only these valves are present, right? So between the right chambers, we have the tricuspid valve. Between the left chambers, we have bicuspid valve. And in the base of this pulmonary artery and aorta, we have one more valve that is semilunar valve. Yeah, so basically in heart, we have three different types of valve. That is tricuspid valve, bicuspid valve, and semilunar valve. Tricuspid valve, bicuspid valve, and semilunar valve, right? See, these semilunar valve actually it is two in numbers. There are two semilunar valve that is present in the base of this blood vessel, right? So generally, if they are asking, see, there are multiple twists they can keep in this lesson. If they are asking for types of valves, the answer must be three, right? If they are asking for types of valve, the answer must be three. If they are asking for number of valves, the answer must be 4. Is that clear? Types of valves means the answer will be 3. That is tricuspid, bicuspid and semilunar valve. If they are asking for number of valves, like we have one tricuspid valve, one bicuspid valve and two semilunar valve. Clear? So in total we have 4 valves in heart. Is that clear? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the structure of heart. And apart from this, you know, the muscle, heart muscle, it is special. It is specially made up of involuntary striated muscles. They are involuntary striated muscles, right? So it is not asking permission to you, right? Whether I should pump or not. Yes or no? So it is involuntary in nature, but it will be having striations in them. Striation means they are looking at the heart muscles. They will be having some stripes over here and there, right? So it is a special type of muscle which is found only in heart, right? So generally, even like when you are coming to the muscle portion, we will be seeing the cardiac muscle separate, right? So cardiac muscle that is having the nature of involuntary, yeah, it is working by their own, right? And we will also call it as myogenic heart, yeah, myogenic heart. And striations will also be there, yeah. So that's why cardiac muscle it is coming under some different category, and these muscles are working on by their own, right? How it is working, the electrical impulse which is produced in the muscle itself is helping them to work, right? It is helping them to pump. So from certain region of this muscles, it is having certain patches like this. Here I'll make it in some different color. So here we have, here we have, here we have, here we have. Yeah. So the different type of tissues which is present in cardiac muscles is generating the electric impulse for pumping the heart, right? So what you will call this different type of tissues? We will call it as nodal tissues. Nodal tissues. Clear? So these nodal tissues are helping in generating the electrical impulse, right? See here we will be having SA node, and this one it is AV node which is present here, and this one it is bundle of His, and lower region this is Purkinje fiber, right? This is Purkinje fiber, right? So you just write until this. The additional information I will tell you. Is it clear? This is what structure of heart. Is that clear? Whatever I have taught you till now. Clear means you can respond in chat to once you have completed. You just revert that like how completed, and this has been clear to you. Can you able to see the board? Board is visible no still? Okay, I think now it is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Rest of the people, once you have completed, you can also give me yes. I have got only one yes. 2, 3.
Yes, ma'am.
4, 5. So 14. 14 people have completed, no? Okay, guys, let me share you one video, right? That will explain you with the visualization, right? The structure of heart, how it will be. So let me share that. Tell me it is visible or not. It's visible, no?
Heart. The heart is a complex pumping organ. If we look at a section of the heart, we observe that it receives deoxygenated blood from different parts of the body in its right atrium. Now, the tricuspid valve opens and the blood keeps flowing into the right ventricle. Then, the right atrium contracts, pushing the remaining blood into the right ventricle. It then contracts to push the blood into the pulmonary artery, which carries the blood to the lungs. The pulmonary veins bring back the oxygenated blood into the left atrium of the heart. During atrial contraction, the blood passes through the bicuspid valve into the left ventricle. During ventricular contraction, the blood is pumped into the aorta, from where it goes to various parts of the body. Specific group of cells in heart continuously generate impulses, which can cause the rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the atria and the ventricles. Inside the heart, blood flows in a specific direction. The contraction of the atria is called the atrial systole. At this time, the ventricles are in diastole. Then the ventricles contract, and this is called ventricular systole, and the atria are in diastole. This sequence of events, which occurs from the beginning of one heartbeat to the beginning of the second one, is called the cardiac cycle.
We just told you like how heart functions, right? Just told you how heart functions. But let me also see whether the structure is there, because structure is more important in order to understand the function. Fine. And you remember that compared to the atrial wall is there, no? Two atrium we have in the heart. Compared to the atrial wall, the ventricular walls are much stronger. Yeah, much stronger. Why? Because it is pumping the blood throughout your body, right? It is pumping the blood throughout the body. So let me also see whether I have visualization for heart structure. So I'll share it now.
In this module, you will learn about the structure of human heart. Our heart beats faster when we are running, dancing, or exercising. But do you know what heart actually is and how does it look like? The human heart is a reddish-brown colored muscular structure. The size of a human heart is approximately the size of a clenched fist of the person.
Okay. So if you close your fist, so how much it is coming around? Yeah, that is what your heart size will be, right?
Heart is a pump-like organ of the human circulatory system, which is sandwiched between the right and the left lung in the thoracic cavity.
This portion is mediastinum.
Owing to its pear shape, the heart has a broad upper part and a narrow lower part pointing downwards to the left side in the thoracic cavity. The heart is enclosed in a fluid-filled double-layered membrane known as the pericardium. The pericardium further comprises an outer parietal pericardium
and
an inner visceral pericardium.
Fine.
The space present between the two layers of the pericardium is termed as the pericardial cavity, which is filled with the pericardial fluid. The main function of the pericardial fluid is to protect the heart from shock and any mechanical injury. The musculature of the heart can be subdivided into three distinct layers: epicardium, myocardium, and endocardium. The outermost thin layer is known as the epicardium. The epicardium is composed of simple squamous epithelium and fibroelastic connective tissue. The epicardium is followed by the middle layer known as the myocardium.
The
myocardium is the thickest layer
it will be having the striations as well. It works in involuntary way. Yeah, so that is myocardial muscles only, right? So it is a specific muscle which you can find only in the heart. Yeah, no other portion we can able to find. That's why, like, even when you classify the muscles into three different portions, you'll be classifying skeletal muscles, visceral muscles, and cardiac muscles. Yeah, so that type of muscles is only present in heart. Yes,
composed of cardiac muscles. The last innermost layer of heart is known as the endocardium. The endocardium is composed of simple squamous epithelium along with a thin layer of loose connective tissue. Let's see the internal structure of heart. The human heart can be differentiated into 4 chambers: 2 upper small atria and 2 lower large ventricles. In other words, the human heart can be said to be divided into the right and left halves. The right half
Guys, can you
consists
name
of the
the valve? What is this valve name? Can you name it? Name of this valve?
Tricuspid, ma'am.
And this one?
Bicuspid valve.
Bicuspid.
Another name of it?
Mitral valve.
Yeah.
Mitral
And in the
valve.
lower region of the pulmonary artery and aorta, which valve we will be having?
Semilunar valve, ma'am.
Yeah, very good. And how many it is in numbers?
2.
Very good. Yeah, now listen to the video.
right atrium and the right ventricle, whereas the left half of the heart comprises the left atrium and the left ventricle. Internally, the upper 2 atria, the left and the right atrium, are separated from each other by a partition called the interatrial septum. Similarly, the right and left ventricles are separated by a thick and curved
Interventricular
partition
septum.
called the interventricular septum.
And the upper one it is interatrial septum.
Let's now learn about each of the chambers in detail. To begin with, let us learn about the atria. The atrium is a thin-walled structure that receives blood from different parts of the body. The right atrium is bigger in size as compared to the left atrium, and it receives the deoxygenated blood. The left atrium, on the other hand, receives the oxygenated blood. Next to the atrium is the ventricle. Ventricle is a thick-walled chamber. The ventricular walls are thicker than that of the atria because they pump out the oxygenated blood with force to different parts of the body. The right and left ventricles receive blood from the right and the left atria respectively. Let's now learn about the blood vessels coming in and going out from the 4 chambers of the heart. Let's start with the atria. The right atrium receives deoxygenated blood from the 2 large vessels, namely the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. The superior vena cava brings deoxygenated blood from the upper regions of the body, and the inferior vena cava brings blood from the lower regions of the body. The opening of the inferior vena cava into the right atrium is regulated by a membranous valve known as the Eustachian valve.
You just write it down. I have told you,
The
Eustachian
left
valve.
atrium connects through 2 veins, one from the right and another from the left, from both right and left lungs respectively. These are known as the pulmonary veins. Now that you've learned about the blood vessels connected to the right and the left atrium, let's now learn about the blood vessels that come in and go out from the ventricles. The ventricles give rise to the pulmonary artery and the aorta.
Guys, please do
The
remember
right
that
ventricle
in this
from its
video it is
upper
not,
left corner
it is not made clear.
gives off a
Let me
large
explain
blood
you
vessel
that.
called the pulmonary artery. It is further differentiated,
See, this region they have said
and the inferior vena
inferior vena
cava
cava, superior vena
brings
cava,
blood
right?
from
And
the
also
lower.
you remember there is one more blood vessel that is supplying deoxygenated blood to the right atrium, that is coronary sinus. I have told because from heart also the deoxygenated blood will be collected, right? And that will be given to the right atrium, that is coronary sinus, which is draining their blood into right atrium. Remember that. And only with the left atrium it will be having 4 pulmonary veins, right? And these four pulmonary veins, it is arising from the lungs. You remember that is a exception case because generally vein will carry deoxygenated blood, but this pulmonary vein it is carrying oxygenated blood. Yeah, so that is coming in contact with the left atrium. Is that clear? You always have to remember the blood vessels which has been supplied to the different chambers of our heart. Remember. So remember that right atrium it is having superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, coronary sinus, and left atrium it is only four pulmonary vein, right? And left ventricle pulmonary artery it is arising, yeah. And sorry, right ventricle the pulmonary artery it is arising, left ventricle the aorta it is arising. Clear? Hope it is clear.
Regions of the body. The opening of the inferior vena cava into the right atrium is regulated by a membranous valve known as the Eustachian valve. The left atrium connects through two veins, one from the right and another from the left, from both right and left lungs respectively. These are known as the pulmonary veins.
So here we are getting
Now that you've learned,
like in which way they are saying. See, two veins it is arising from right lung. Two veins it is arising from left lung. Right. Anyhow, that is being drained into left atrium only. Right. Since it is like in illustrated right atrium, it is not that it is not draining their blood into right atrium. Right. See, two veins from right lungs and two veins from left lung. It is draining their blood into left atrium only. You always have to remember this, right? And we'll see the ventricle structure now.
for the blood vessels connected to the right and the left atrium, let's now learn about the blood vessels that come in and go out from the ventricles. The ventricles give rise to the pulmonary artery and the aorta. The right ventricle from its upper left corner gives off a large blood vessel called the pulmonary artery. It is further differentiated into right and left pulmonary arteries to carry deoxygenated blood to lungs. The left ventricle from its upper right gives off a large vessel known as the aorta. Like pulmonary artery, the aorta is differentiated into ascending aorta, arc of aorta, and descending aorta. The aorta and the pulmonary artery are connected with each other through a ligament known as the ligamentum arteriosum.
Kindly note it down.
Now let's learn about the various valves that regulate
pass
the
over
flow
them
of blood
once.
in the atria and the ventricles.
So the ligament which is connecting both pulmonary artery and aorta, it is ligamentum arteriosum. Write it down.
Now let's learn about the various valves that regulate the flow of blood in the atria and the ventricles. The right atrium opens into the right ventricle through an aperture called the right atrioventricular aperture or the AV
Which is
aperture.
guarded by
This
tricuspid
aperture is
valve.
guarded by a one-way valve known as the tricuspid valve, comprising three membranous flaps. Similar to the right atrium, the left atrium opens into the left ventricle through a left atrioventricular aperture. This aperture is guarded by a one-way valve known as the bicuspid valve or the mitral valve. The bicuspid valve, as the name suggests, is composed of two membranous flaps. The membranous flaps of the bicuspid and the tricuspid valves are connected to the papillary muscles via fibrous cord
Chordae tendineae.
called chordae
This
tendineae.
this I will tell you, okay? Remember, you would have heard it off, okay? Like when generally people who have the weakened heart won't lift huge weights. They won't generally lift. Yes or no? So in them, these ligaments, no, these ligaments that is attaching the valves with the ventricular wall. Clear? These ligaments which is attaching the atrioventricular valve, that is bicuspid and tricuspid valve. So it is attaching the valve with ventricular wall. Clear? So where it is getting attached, here we will be having certain muscles, that is what is papillary muscles. Yeah. And with the muscles, the valves are being connected by means of the ligament, that you will call it as chordate tendinae, right? That you will call it as chordate tendinae, and it is providing the grip to the valve, right? It is providing the grip to the valve. See, if it is one or two ligaments, if it is coming off, then the person, we can say their heart, it is weakened. Yeah, they should not lift huge amount of weights and all. If they are doing so, then their heart will fail to pump the blood. Clear? Or there will be some mess up will happen between the means chambers, atrial and ventricular chambers. Clear?
This sort of attachment protects the valves from collapsing due to the ventricular contraction. In addition to the atria being guarded by valves, the pulmonary artery and the aorta are characterized by the presence of two semilunar valves. The main function of the semilunar muscles is to guard the opening of the pulmonary aorta and to prevent the backflow of blood in the right and left ventricles. Now that you've learnt about the various blood vessels and valves present in the atria and the ventricles, let us learn about the nodal tissues. The nodal tissues are mainly involved in the contraction of heart muscles. The nodal tissue consists of the sinoatrial node, SA node, the atrioventricular node, AV node, and the bundle of His or the atrioventricular bundle. The sinoatrial node or the SA node is located in the wall of the right atrium, slightly below the opening of the superior vena cava. On the other hand, the atrioventricular or the AV node is located in the wall between the right atrium and the right ventricle.
Guys, were it audible?
The last nodal tissue, the bundle of His, is to guard the
Next to
opening
the
of the...
valves,
Now that you've
I
learnt
just
about the
explained about
various
the
blood
nodal tissues,
vessels
okay?
and valves present in the atria and the ventricles, let us learn about the nodal tissues. The nodal tissues are mainly involved in the contraction of heart muscles. The nodal tissue consists of the sinoatrial node, SA node, the atrioventricular node, AV node, and the bundle of His or the atrioventricular bundle. The sinoatrial node or the SA node is located in the wall of the right atrium, slightly below the opening of the superior vena cava. On the other hand, the atrioventricular or the AV node is located in the wall between the right atrium and the right ventricle. The last nodal tissue, the bundle of His, includes the right and left bundles and the Purkinje fibers. The bundle of His originates from the base of the AV node and goes downward till it bifurcates into the right and left branches, each branch entering the wall of each ventricle. In each ventricle, these branches again break up in many small branches called the Purkinje fibers, which are spread to the entire musculature of the ventricles. Let's recapitulate what you have learnt in this module. Humans possess pear-shaped, reddish-brown colored, four-chambered heart. The heart is enclosed in a fluid-filled double-layered membrane called pericardium, which secretes a fluid called pericardial fluid. The musculature of human heart consists of three layers: epicardium, the myocardium, and the endocardium. Human heart is differentiated into four chambers: two upper small atria and two lower large ventricles. Atrium is a thin-walled structure which receives blood from different parts of the body. Ventricle is a thick-walled chamber. The wall of left ventricle is 3 times as thick as that of the right ventricle. The right atrium receives blood from the two large vessels, namely superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. The left atrium receives two veins from both right and left lungs respectively. These are known as pulmonary veins. Ventricles give rise to pulmonary artery and aorta. To control the blood flow in the heart, it has four valves: bicuspid valve, tricuspid valve, and semilunar valves. Atria and ventricles are internally separated by interatrial and interventricular septa respectively. The nodal tissue consists of sinoatrial node, SA node, atrioventricular node, AV node, and bundle of His or atrioventricular bundle.
So I'll just pass it. You can take the screenshot of it also, okay? So you can keep it for remembering structure of heart. Yeah, you can keep the points. Have you taken? Yes? For completed? Can you able to hear me? Okay. Right. So I'll just stop sharing it. Okay. So is that clear? Like we have just discussed about the structure of heart and how it is functioning. Yeah, that we have discussed. Is it clear? I guess it is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine.
Yes, ma'am.
So now let me tell you about the stroke volume and cardiac output. Fine. I'll share my screen with you. Okay. So I'll clear all my drawings. Fine. Now I would like to tell you about this cardiac cycle, cardiac output, stroke volume, and under cardiac cycle itself we will be talking about systole and diastole. So let's start from cardiac cycle. So as you seen in the video, cardiac cycle it is the period between alternative contractions, right? Or we can say it is a time period between the two different beats. Yeah, the heart. But by the way, how the heart sound is produced? Heart sound is produced. We can able to hear some lub and dub. Yeah, that sound we can able to hear. No, that lub and dub. How it is produced? Any idea? Yes or no?
The opening and the closing of the valve. Heart valve.
Actually, it is due to the closure of valve. It is not due to the opening of valve. It is due to the closure of valve, right? So, closure of atrioventricular valve resulting in lub sound. This is a heavy sound, okay? So, lub it is a heavy sound which is lasting for almost 0.16 to 0.90 second. It is a heavy sound which it is lasting for this many second it is lasting for, right? Now coming to the dub, it is happening due to the closure of semilunar valve. Closure of semilunar valve, right? And this sound is light comparatively. This is lasting for 0.10 second. This is lasting for 0.10 seconds. So this is how the heart sound is produced. Always remember that it is not due to the opening of the valve. Due to the closure of the valve, the sound is being produced, right? So between the alternative beats, there is a period, right? So that is what we generally call it as cardiac cycle. So in this, we can able to see the heart four different chambers. It contracts, right? Which means it is undergoing the contraction, and then gradually it is relaxes themselves, right? So the contraction phase you will call it as systole. Yeah, contraction phase you will call it as systole, and relaxation phase you will call it as diastole. Diastole. So basically, if you're looking at the whole heart structure, they all will be in the initial condition. I'm saying, yeah, in the initial condition, they all will be in the diastolic or relaxed condition, right? It will be in the relaxed position. Fine. So that is, you generally say all the four chambers are in the relaxed position, joint diastole, and then the systole, it is being filled by means of the blood, right? It is being filled by means of the blood. So then after once it is being filled, it have to undergo the contraction. Systolic contraction takes place, or we can also call it as systolic. One second, it's not systolic contraction. Just a second. Atrial systole or atrial contraction. How? Atrial systole or atrial contraction. The atrium, it is being filled. Now it have to undergo the contraction, right? So next to that, the atrial systole takes place, and after that, atrial diastole, and ventricular systole takes place. So meanwhile, listen, when atrial systole happens, the blood, it is being pumped into the ventricle, right? So now the ventricle, it is considered as full. Yeah. So once it is, pumped the blood into the ventricle, now it is slowly coming back to the relaxed position. Yeah. The atrium, it is slowly coming back to the relaxed position, and coming to the ventricle, now it is filled by means of blood, right? So now this is the phase, it have to undergo the contraction. So basically, atrial diastole and ventricular systole, it goes on hand to hand, right? Which means happening parallelly, right? Once the ventricular systole is done, the blood, it is given into the corresponding blood vessels, right? And we have semilunar valve also to prevent the backflow, right? So what happens once it is being contracted, and then it is undergoing the ventricular diastole. Ventricular diastole. So generally, heart contracts, that you will call it as systole, atrial systole, and then ventricular systole, and then ventricular diastole, right? So this is what a complete systole and complete diastole. You will generally call it as cardiac cycle, yeah, or period between the alternative contraction and relaxation. You will call it as cardiac cycle, that consists of one systole and one diastole, right? So generally, the systole that happens in atria and ventricle. It is actually together, it is taking some 0.8 second. The cardiac cycle, it is taking together 0.8 second. Right, in that period itself, just think that, imagine it is, pumping 5 liters of blood throughout your body, right? Pumping 5 liters of blood throughout your body. So that is what is cardiac cycle. Hope you have got it. So generally, a cardiac cycle, it is period between alternative contraction and relaxation. Yeah. And then it is having one systole and one diastole. The duration of them, it is 0.8 second. Hope it is clear. Yes. Is that clear? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So just copy it. I'll tell you the cardiac output and stroke volume. So once you have copied it down, you can like respond in chat too. Fine. One person have responded. 2, 3. Completed. Okay, so let me clear this. Now, I'm going to tell you about the cardiac output and stroke volume. So basically, what is cardiac output? Well, the amount of blood that is being pumped by means of heart, yeah, per minute. That is what you generally call it as cardiac output. For that, you're supposed to know how many beats are there. For each beat, how much amount of blood is given outside. Clear? So basically, what is stroke volume? In order to get the cardiac output, we should know the stroke volume. So stroke volume is for every ventricular contraction, stroke volume, it is the amount of blood. Stroke volume, it is amount of blood that is pumped out for every ventricular contraction, right? For every beat, we can say in other terms too, right? For every beat or for every ventricular contraction, how much amount of blood is given out or how much amount of blood is pumped out, right? So that is what we generally call as stroke volume. Clear? And they have measured it as 70 ml of blood. 70 ml of blood it is given every time whenever there is a ventricular contraction. For every beat, it is giving 70 ml of blood. Understood? So how we can able to find the cardiac output, right? Cardiac output means, see, that is nothing but stroke volume into number of beats per minute. So this is what the formula for cardiac output, and this question they have asked a few times. Fine. So generally how it will be, the stroke volume, it is 70 ml. The number of beats also for a minute. How many, what is the beats? How many beats it is undergoing? The heart is undergoing per minute. Anybody knows? Any idea? It is approximately 72. Actually 70 to 75 time. The nodal tissues, it is producing the impulse. Clear? So basically your heart, it is beating 72 times for a minute. Clear? So we know for every beat, it is giving 70 ml of blood outside. And for a minute, your heart, it is beating 72 times. Right? So now we can able to assess or calculate the cardiac output, which means amount of blood it is given outside for a minute, right? So if you are calculating it, how much you are getting, can you tell me the amount? Just calculate and tell me the amount. Guys, how much we will be getting? Are you people are like that, weak in maths or what? I have got one. It is exactly 5040, okay? So 5040 ml. So approximately it is 5 liters. Yeah. So just think that your heart, it is pumping 5 liters of blood for a minute. Yeah. So this is what generally we call it as cardiac output and stroke volume. So once again, I'll tell you, Cardiac cycle it is a time period between the alternative contraction and relaxation or alternative beats, right? It consists of one systole and one diastole. The duration it is 0.8 second. Clear? Each one it is like a cardiac cycle 0.8 second. The stroke volume in the sense the amount of blood which is being pumped out for every ventricular contraction. One second, just went on mute. So the amount of blood which is given out for every ventricular contraction you will call it a stroke volume, right? So the amount it is 70 ml. And if you are getting to know the cardiac output, the amount of blood which is given to the body for a minute, right? So stroke volume into number of beats per minute, right? Number of beats per minute. So 70 ml into 72, like 72 times your heart beats per minute. So approximately it is 5 liters per minute. Clear? Is it clear? Okay, just note it down. If there is any doubt, you can let me know. Shall I clear it? Once you have completed, please give me notification that you have completed. Do respond in chat. Okay. So let me share you some video recorded with this. Stop sharing.
Heartbeat and pulse. Heartbeat can be defined as the rhythmic contraction and relaxation of heart. The human heart beats at the rate of about 72 to 80 times per minute under normal conditions. A complete heartbeat consists of both systoles, contraction, and diastoles, relaxation of atria and ventricles of heart. Immediately after the ventricular systole, a wave of distension passes along the arteries. This wave is called arterial pulse or simply pulse.
So basically,
It can be felt by placing fingertips on the inner side of the wrist.
Arterial pulse. So this is a major vein that is going through your
The
wrist.
pulse palpitates at a rate corresponding to that of the heartbeat.
When you can feel it over here neck too. You can feel it over here neck too, and even in your wrist too, you can feel it.
Heart sounds. The rhythmic closure and the opening of the valves cause the sounds of the heartbeat during the cardiac cycle. The first sound lub is caused by the closure of atrioventricular valves. The second sound dub is caused by the closure of the semilunar valves. Then there is a pause before the next lub sound occurs. This pause is almost twice as long as the pause between the lub and dub.
So that's it. Fine, guys. So, like we have almost completed many details regarding with that. Nodal tissues alone we need to discuss in detail. That we'll do in the next class. Fine. So, if there is any doubt, you can ask me now. See, first we have discussed heart structure. We have discussed, okay, and then we went on discussing about the cardiac cycle. Even I have told you regarding the nodal tissues. Yeah, like what is SA, node AB, node, bundle of this and Purkinje fiber. I have told you, right? And apart from that, apart from heart structure and this nodal tissues, we have also seen about the cardiac cycle, heart sound, stroke volume, cardiac output we have seen. Yeah, if you're having any doubts, you can ask me now. Otherwise, I'll wind up the meeting. Anybody, any doubts? Or I'll just leave a text in chat, no? That you have no doubts. I'll get clarified with. No doubts, no doubts. Okay, okay, fine. Okay, pa. So right from this portion, you will be having test on the coming Friday. Yeah, same 15 questions you will be having. Better prepare it. If there is any doubt, you just ping me. Fine. I'll wind up the meeting. Thank you all. Yeah, thank you.